Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of my top 100 Magic cards of all time. Today we're going to take a look at number 70. Today we're going to take a look at number 70 through 61. So let's get started. Number 70 is Garrick Wildespeaker. Garrick Wildespeaker is from the Lorwyn 5, the first 5 planeswalkers that were ever introduced into Magic. And funnily enough, the best one, which was really awesome because back in the day, green was bad. White was also bad, but green was definitely bad. And it was fun to watch Garrick basically rise to the top, what we would consider Pro Tour Morning Tide these days. Like Bitter Blossom shows up. Bitter Blossom, oh my god, it's wrecking standard. What are we going to do? Cats, we live with dogs. Up is down, whatever. Well, Garrick Wildespeaker plus black mana plus Thoughtseize, which was amazing, plus green elves that were unbelievably sweet. Turns out that green-black elves won that Pro Tour. So Charles Gindy himself won with a green-black aggro type of deck that was just right at disrupting what Bitter Blossom was trying to do in those fairy decks of the time. And it was really fun because I got to talk to R&D while I was at the show, and they were explaining that like they wanted the green one to be the best one, so that's what they did. And sure enough, Garrick was amazing. Garrick was fantastic in Standard the entire time he showed up. Of course, he was great not only in Standard, but of course in Extended with another card on my top 100 that I spoke about, which was Death Cloud. So Garrick has sort of a pedigree, and it sucks in some ways that they turned Garrick into a villain. Like they could have saved Garrick. They didn't have to make Garrick a villain and make him sort of turn into this weird guy who like hunts planeswalkers or whatever. So this version of Garrick Wildespeaker is probably not coming back. Not unless they do some sort of weird time travel thing, and I certainly don't expect it. But it's great in a vacuum. When they first showed up, the best planeswalker was Garrick Wildespeaker. Yes, the second best was Jace Beleren, and yeah, both of them were played infinite, and it sucks that Chandra was bad, but Liliana Vest got to see play, a Johnny Goldman got to see play in tokens decks, so it was great that they all kind of had a little bit of time in the sun. Chandra Naylor not so much. They had a weird Super Friends deck at the time, but that was about it. But Garrick can live on top. He's always fantastic. I've had this guy in my cube ever since it's been printed, and it's always been great. Garrick is fantastic. Number 69 is a Samaru Hound of Konda. Now look, these days they give you 1 mana 2/1s like it's just handing out candy. Just everybody gets a 1 mana 2/1, whatever. Well, back then they didn't do this. They didn't really make 1 mana 2 power creatures. That was crazy. You don't want to do that. You're going to disrupt the balance of the force, and then everyone's just going to go nuts. And so this was one of those kind of groundbreaking cards, at least it sort of felt groundbreaking at the time, for Champions of Kamigawa. Now, of course, we just came off Mirrodin, so it's hard to be like, oh my god, power level, when like the entire game kind of got destroyed for a while thanks to Affinity. But when this was announced, man, I was just like, oh my god, this is incredible. 1 mana 2/2. I've played with Savannah Lines, but I've never played with anything like this. Oh my god. And it was sweet, like, and it was good at the time. A lot of people played 3 of it, so you wouldn't draw 2 in your opening hand. And so it did get to see some constructed play. It was really awesome. It got to be in my cube for a very long time until they just sort of kind of outclassed it because all these 1 mana 2/1s kept doing a lot more interesting things. But regardless, in a time capsule, in just that little moment where Samaru was spoiled, man, it was beautiful, and it was exciting, and it was cool. And for a guy who had left the game and played a ton of white weenie and white green aggro decks and came back to see artifacts just being the best thing ever and having to live through that, and then Darksteel, and then of course Fifth Dawn, where there's a whole bunch of multicolor stuff and blah blah blah. It was great that when Champions of Kamigawa showed up, they're like, here, check out these awesome white creatures, and I was like, yes, Samaru was awesome. And we'll get to another one here in a minute. Number 68 is Birds of Paradise. Now, Birds of Paradise is a much lauded card. It's one of the classic cards from Alpha. I mean, this card's been around for as long as Magic's been around. Birds of Paradise is one of the most efficient mana producers of all time, and it's not really close. It's also one of those cards that Wizards is probably not going to print in Standard again. It's just not going to happen because its power level is basically ubiquitous. It is one of the best green drops you could possibly have. It fixes your mana perfectly. It puts you from 1 mana to 3 mana. And what that does to Magic, and what it does to R&D specifically, is that it really limits what they can do at 3 mana. Because when they know that a Llanowar Elves exists, or an Elvish Mystic, or a Birds of Paradise exists, well, then you can get from 1 mana to 3 mana really quickly. How are they going to deal with that? How does that affect things? So all of a sudden, things that could be 3 mana have to be 4 mana because of what you can kind of jump. So Birds of Paradise lets you kind of jump ahead of the curve. And People didn't really respect it that much, certainly at first, but of course it grew on people as we got better at the game and as more decks showed up and so on and so forth. But the multicolor powers of birds are not to be underestimated. Now, this card showed up in Alpha, it showed up in Beta, it showed up in Unlimited, and in 4th, and it showed up in Revised, it showed up in 4th, and 5th, and 6th, and 7th, and 8th, and then it disappeared for years. And it showed up in the first amazingly successful multicolor block, the first multicolor block since Invasion, Ravnica, City of Guilds. Yes, Birds of Paradise was absolutely perfect for it. Saw infinite play in Standard, fixed mana like never before, made some really, really sweet decks. Still probably too good for Standard, but we got to enjoy it. It was great. Came with some amazing artwork, which is also, I feel, sort of reaching that iconic status. Birds of Paradise is fantastic and will forever be one of the best creatures ever made. Number 67 is Sylvan Library. You know what? They don't make them like they used to because they kind of didn't know what they were doing. Legends was a set full of really weird stuff and weird cards and weird abilities, like green drawing extra cards and paying life for cards and things green never does and things green never really did sense. So Sylvan Library was a real oddity for me. When I started playing around Ice Age, Legends had come and gone. And so I was like, what is this card? I don't even understand what this card does. And then they tried to print it in 4th edition, which was available at the time. So I was like, 4th edition doesn't make a ton of sense. The Legends one doesn't make a lot of sense either. And then the 5th edition one had 0 colon on it. Now it's an activated ability? What? Because you can miss it or something? I don't know. It was strange. They finally printed another one where it's just at the beginning of your draw step a thing happens. So it's nice that they more or less figured out the templating, sorta, and that's how weird this card is. But honestly, that's also how powerful this card is. This card lets you draw cards in green without needing any other colors. It gives you card selection. If you're able to shuffle your deck, it becomes amazing. So there's definitely upsides to this card. This card definitely saw infinite play in my cube, and here's the best part. It's amazing in that type of format because you don't have to run multiples. One of the problems with Sylvan Library when it was in Standard is because you don't want more than one. More than one really does nothing. But when you're in a singleton format, like a Commander, like a cube, it is fantastic, and it is perfect, and it is awesome, and it is one of the cards that you can almost guarantee they're never going to get anywhere close to in terms of designing stuff like this, which makes Sylvan Library amazing. Number 66 is Venser Shaper Savant. Now Venser's dead. Just so you know, he died. He died around Scars of Mirrodin block, something to do with him and Karn and the world of Mirrodin or whatever. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to any lore. All I know is he's dead. However, he lives on in this card and will forever be looked at as one of the best blue cards, certainly one of the best blue creatures ever made. This card just deals with everything. It bounces the spell or the permanent. It slices and it dices. When I went to Valencia, Spain in 2007, I was going for the Invitational, which actually happened in the Spiel at Essen, which is a big gaming convention. When I went there, you can go watch the Magic Show. They had a huge flood and day one got completely wiped out. They have never, to this day, canceled day one of a Pro Tour. That was it. That was the only one. And they had to run this massive Pro Tour, like 15 rounds over 2 days, and crunch top 8 at the end of Sunday, and it was a big mess. But one of the things I remember most, beyond all the other incredible experiences of going to the Pro Tour for the first time, one of the things I remember about Venser Shaper Savant was that he was in the finals. He was in the winning deck because Remy Fortier was playing that guy and was just rocking every which way that you could use Venser. He was using Venser. Venser's fantastic because, I mean, just what is it that you want to answer? It answers. It's very much sort of the way that you think of, like, why is blue so good? And you look at Venser and you go, oh yeah, it just deals with like literally stone everything. So Venser is a power level that I'm not sure we're going to see again. And it's a card that it's certainly a character that I don't expect to see again. And he has been insane in cube, always has, always will be. One of the best creatures. I love Venser. Long may his memory reign. Number 65 is Gideon Jorah. Gideon Jorah has had an amazing sort of timeline in Magic. Now these days he's in the Justice League and he's a part of the Gatewatch and they're having all these adventures and they're in Kaladesh right now, and that's totally cool. And he had a ridiculous version in Ally of Zendikar from Battle for Zendikar, and that's great. But in Rise of the Eldrazi, this guy showed up and people were like, what? He doesn't have an ultimate. What's wrong with his ultimate? There's something broken with his ultimate. And there's like, no, there's nothing broken. This was really the time where Wizards started to play around with Planeswalkers a little bit more than just like a 1 ability, 2 ability, and an ultimate. 1 ability, 2 ability, ultimate. That was kind of the churn, and we got used to this, like, okay, what's the ultimate thing going to be? But now we didn't really have one. And not only that, it was activated for nothing. Like, what? It was really strange, and there was honestly some question as to whether this card was that good. People kind of recognize that Planeswalkers are good anyway. But this guy's amazing. Gideon Jorah was absolutely huge, was played infinite, was incredibly powerful because he could make all of your opponent's creatures attack him. That's either a fog or a complete butt kicking when all their creatures smash into yours for value. So whether he was attacking in, whether he was killing something or making them attack you, every way you sliced it, he was good. He followed up, Jace the Mind Sculptor for a very long time as the 4-drop and 5-drop. So you can just imagine Jace on 4, Gideon on 5. It's really hard to lose those games of Magic. One of the best Planeswalkers ever. Certainly one of the best 5-mana Planeswalkers ever. I love Gideon Jorah, and I don't expect to see this version ever show up again, but I'm okay with Gideon showing up again. Number 64 is Cuckoo Show, the Evening Star. Man, do I love Coco. Oh, Coco here. Not Cocoa Puffs. That was like a weird deck thing. I don't know. But Coco here, Mr. Cuckoo Show, Mr. Midnight. I just made that up. Nobody called him that. The point is, he was an incredibly awesome legendary dragon. He was one of the first cards spoiled from the set, and certainly one of the first cards from Champions that got me like going, wow, Magic is so much cooler these days. Like, yeah, we went through the like Mirrodin artifacty stuff, whatever, but no, man, this is what I love about Magic. Huge, awesome creatures with unbelievable artwork that have amazing effects. Draining for 5 just for existing, playing another one, you could drain your opponent for 10 at instant, well, not instant speed, but whenever it resolved. Like draining for 10 just by having 2 Cuckoo Shows, that was the thing that happened. That was the thing that killed people in Standard quite a bit. This card was very powerful. It saw play in mono black control decks. It saw play in black-white reanimator decks. Like, this card got around, and for good reason. It saw play in my cube from the instant that I built one. I love it. I love the fact that it's an amazing 6-mana 5/5. It's got a killer ability. Man, there's just some really awesome cards that you need to know, and there's some really awesome dragons that I have to introduce you to, which leads me to my next one. Number 63 is Yosuke, the Morningstar. Now, Yosuke, let me tell you, Yosuke is a friend of mine. I played with Yosuke almost immediately. When he was back in Ravnica Standard, which was really cool, there used to be a black-white reanimator deck, which played 8 dragons, 4 Cuckoo Shows, and 4 Yosei's. That was a deck. That's a thing that existed, and I got to play with it. And around that time, there was another deck in the Unified Standard format. Now, Unified Standard, if you don't recall, is where you have 3 people build decks in Standard, but none can have more. You can't have more than 4 of one card amongst all 3 people. And there used to be a Team Pro Tour, and there used to be Team PTQs. Like me and 3 buddies, we would haul butt wherever. We go to the middle of the country. We'd travel for hours. It was super awesome. And around that time, I played a deck that had Genju of the Fields, it had Tatsumasa the Dragon's Fang, I believe is the name of that one, and Yosuke the Morningstar. Now, it also had Greater Good, but one of the shticks of it was that you could attach Tatsumasa to Genju of the Fields once it was activated. Genju of the Fields had lifelink, but it didn't have lifelink. It had the activated ability of lifelink. If whenever this card deals damage, you gain that much life. And so if you activated Genju again, it got the ability again. And so it had basically 2 instances of lifelink, and you did it again, you'd have 3 instances, and so forth. And so I would attach it to Genju, I would activate it like 6 times, and I would gain 1,000,000 life. And my opponent was playing something very similar, but did not have the Genju Tatsumasa Mondo combo. And Greater Good lets you sacrifice a creature to draw cards equal to its power. And Yosuke, clearly, when you have a sacrifice outlet, gets a heck of a lot better, because at instant speed, you can lock down most of their permanents, certainly during their upkeep, and then they wouldn't be able to get it next turn either. So the funny thing for me was being able to play with Yosuke and Greater Good and the Tatsumasa and the Genju, and I gained so much life one game, and this was in a game that mattered, so much life, that the guy across from me took something like 6 turns because he was playing Greater Good in Yosei, and he locked me out of my entire untap step for like 6 turns. But I gained so much life, it didn't matter. I got to untap, then I started doing my own Yosei shenanigans, gained an infinite more life with Genju, and killed him soon after. Yosei, oh my god, I love Yosei so much. And my last story about Yosei is I used to play with a guy a long time ago. I don't even know where he is these days. But he loved Yosei, and I loved Yosei, he loved Yosei, that's fantastic. But one day, he's like, hey, check this out. And he took off his shirt, and he showed his tattoo. Now, some people think of tattoos as like, it's got like here, and maybe there's one on the chest or something, or maybe it's not even on your shoulder blade, right? This was his entire back. The guy's entire back, it was a back piece. It was blown up. It was literally edge to edge Yosei on his back. It was awesome. Like, he got a really good tattoo artist to do it. It looked just like the card. It was amazing. So I don't even know where that guy is. So Jordan, if you're out there, you should post a picture of that stuff, because it is still impressive, even to this day, to think of a legendary dragon from Kamigawa is living on somebody's skin. Yosei is awesome. Number 62 is a Johnny Vengeant. Now, a Johnny Vengeant is a red-white planeswalker that was one of the first multicolored planeswalkers, if not the first multicolored planeswalker, now that I can think of it. But it doesn't matter. One of the things that a Johnny Vengeant kind of taught Magic, certainly taught Wizards itself, was that you don't have to give away your best cards to the pre-releases. Now, this took a little while to kind of catch on, and we'll see in later sort of cards that we go over. But for just playing in the pre-release for Shards of Alara, you got a free copy of a Johnny Vengeant. That's awesome, because I'll take one of the Chase Planeswalkers for free just for playing in a flight. And nowadays, you don't get stuff like that. You get a random rare. Now, back in the day, you got like this is your pre-release card, and everybody gets one of those pre-release cards. Not the case here. So Wizards kind of figured out eventually that you don't really need to put your chase rares into your pre-release packs or your pre-release giveaways. But regardless, a Johnny Vengeant as a card, incredibly powerful. Kind of drove many of his own archetypes, was unbelievable in Cube for me. I played this guy infinite. One of the first really cool, like it had a bunch of really interesting abilities, and that ability to Armageddon you, or Armageddon your opponent, was just incredible, and was certainly something that people like to check off the bucket list as being able to do so. So with the power level is one thing, playability is amazing, impact on formats was great. I've loved playing with it for years. Man, the idea that it was able to teach Wizards a lesson is just kind of icing on the cake. Number 61 is Figure of Destiny. Now, Figure of Destiny is an incredible Magic card. Now, I love White Weenie decks, White Weenie cards. We've spoken about this. You'll certainly see more White Weenie stuff, White-Green aggro stuff as we go forward. But it also was kind of the precursor to Level Up. Now, Level Up showed up in Rise of the Eldrazi. It was an amazing mechanic. It still is. For God's sakes, Wizards, would you please bring back Level Up? Because looking at cards like this just makes me feel so nostalgic for having the ability to take a creature that is very small or very weak and do something really interesting with it. Well, Figure of Destiny starts out as a 1/1. He's a good old-fashioned 1-mana 1/1. Turns out this 1-mana 1/1 very much took over Standard during its time, to the point where Stillmoon Cavalier, and you can look up that card, that is a card with protection from white and black, was used to help fight against it, because this card is a monster force that must be reckoned with. It quickly turns into a 2/2, and then on your turn 2, and then on turn 3 it'll make it a 4/4, and then later, whenever you choose, it gets to become a ridiculous monster. So the other memory I have very clearly about Figure of Destiny was at Pro Tour Hollywood in 2007, at what you would describe as Pro Tour Morningtide these days. Got to have a conversation with R&D, and I won't name names, but there was somebody from Wizards who was talking to me, and he said, hey man, because Shadowmoor was kind of, whether it was either out or it was coming up or whatever, he said, look, soon in an upcoming set, there's going to be a 1-drop that's just for you, man, that you're totally going to love. And I was like, okay, that's cryptic, which is pretty standard for the cryptic Wizard stuff that you hear anyway. But regardless, when they debuted Figure of Destiny, I knew exactly what that person was talking about, because holy cow, nothing fulfills my dreams like having a 1-mana white 1-mana 1/1 that is able to turn into a monster and take over the format, which it certainly did. Figure of Destiny is awesome. And that wraps up my 4th edition of my top 100 cards of all time. We're almost halfway. And I really appreciate you guys' feedback. If you have any about what I've talked about today, please leave it below. If you have memories, thoughts, feelings on what may or may not be here, what should or should not be here, I'm happy to hear them. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, do all those cool things that say you want me to make more of this stuff. And until next time, Magic players, this is Evan Irwin, tapping the cards so you don't have to.